Now the president is explaining these are the consequences. This is what happens if you don't reach a deal with the United States.
Now, Japan and South Korea are to face a 25% tax on the goods they sell to the US, and they've been warned not to retaliate. The White House press secretary, Catherine Leavitt, said President Trump is extending the July the 9th deadline for deals with other countries.
The president will also sign an executive order today delaying the July 9th deadline to August 1st. So the reciprocal tariff rate or these new rates that will be provided in this correspondence to these foreign leaders will be going out the door within the next month, or deals will be made. And those countries continue to negotiate with the United States. We've seen a lot of positive developments in the right direction, but the administration, the president and his trade team want to cut the best deals for the American people and the American worker. That's what they're focused on.
Well, as for the UK-US trade deal, the period for revisions is quickly running out. The president has warned that those tariffs could be increased after July the 9th, but it's not clear whether they're covered by that extension announcement tonight. Let's talk to Stephen Vaughn, who was the US trade representative in the first administration. Good evening to you, Stephen.
Hello, I was the acting U.S. trade representative.
Acting U.S. trade representative.
Yeah, I was the general counsel for 2 years.
Well, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you very
First
much.
of all, the US announcing those 25% tariffs on all goods from Japan and South Korea. What do you see as the significance of that?
Well, I think the president has told everybody for some time that his patience on these negotiations was not unlimited. I think they're now telling everybody this is the number that you're going to get, and this is the day the number is going to go into effect, and you have a few more weeks to see if you can reach an agreement. And I think he's been very transparent with Japan and with Korea and with some of the other trading partners that they mentioned today. And now the ball is in their court. They can either live with the tariffs, or they could try to reach some sort of an agreement with the administration.
Yeah, because originally the deadline for reaching agreement was going to be July the 9th, this coming Wednesday. Do you think that the thinking behind this is President Trump is saying, look, here we have 25% tax on these two Asian trading nations, Japan and South Korea. If you don't do a deal, you could expect something similar.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, they've since this morning, they've announced a number of others. They've probably identified about 10 or 11 countries by now that have gotten these letters. So that's absolutely correct that the UK did a deal, Vietnam did a deal, other countries have not done a deal. And now the president is explaining these are the consequences. This is what happens if you don't reach a deal with the United States.
The UK's done this deal. It reduced the tariffs on British steel exported to the US to 25%. The British government is hoping that can be reduced down to zero. It seems that was the hope, the expectation in this deal, but that's still not pinned down. I mean, what's your understanding about how President Trump is approaching trade with the UK?
So what we've been talking about to this point is mostly what they refer to as the reciprocal tariffs. These are tariffs designed to help deal with the trade deficit. The steel tariffs are under a different category. That relates to national security issues. And I think the Americans are going to be very, very cautious about allowing more imported steel into the United States from any source. This has been a very sensitive issue in the U.S. for a very long time, as most people know. So I think that's going to be a real challenge in the negotiations.
So this deal that the US and UK, which was signed but still hasn't actually been fully implemented. Is it your understanding that Britain can expect that on pretty much everything else, we're going to stick to those 10% tariffs?
Yeah, I mean, I think at least, obviously anything can change, and it sort of depends on what happens in the next few days. But yes, I think as a general matter, the UK has the opportunity to continue shipping in at 10%. Whereas it's now, by the end of this month, it looks as though other countries may be faced with tariffs that are significantly greater than that.
There have been some concerns, haven't there, about the effects that these tariffs are going to have on the US economy. Obviously, they're going to make imports into the country more expensive. That could push up inflation and so on. Do you think there are real risks in this tariff regime?
I think that's so far we really just haven't seen any of that. I mean, if anything, the risks over here have been the risks that result from a very, very large current account deficit, which makes it difficult for us to maintain the type of manufacturing sector and good manufacturing jobs that we would like to have. So this president's been in there now since January 20th. We really aren't seeing any inflation significantly from these tariffs. And I don't think the administration expects to see significant inflation as a result of any of the measures that they're taking today.
There's been a huge amount of uncertainty, hasn't there? Not least because some of the tariffs have been imposed and then rescinded and then reimposed. We saw some of that with China. We saw a similar situation with Canada. I mean, do you think that is part of President Trump's whole plan to keep nations guessing? Or is there a certain amount of confusion and decisions being taken on the hoof here?
Look, I certainly think that, there are benefits to if you want to do business in the United States, there are benefits to being in the United States, right? A lot of people in the UK have been wrestling with this issue of trading with the European Union. Everybody understands that if you want to do business with the European Union, there are a lot of advantages to being in the European Union. There are always advantages to being in the market that you're trying to serve. Sometimes and so if you really want true absolute certainty, there's nothing like being in the home market. And I think the president recognizes that. And I think obviously, the system has not been working very well for Americans. That's why they voted for Donald Trump twice. And he was put in there to make a change, and he's going to make a change.
But some of the goods which will now be hit with tariffs are the kind of things that America doesn't even make. Some of for example, if you look at UK steel, this, as I understand it, is a very specialised type of high grade steel that simply isn't produced in the United States. There are risks in all of that, aren't there?
Well, the United States has a very big steel industry. We make close to 100 million tons of steel a year. There aren't too many types of steel that we can't make here. I think that those type of claims, a lot of times on close inspection, those type of claims turn out to be exaggerated. What I would say is this: I think the president has shown flexibility in situations where there are real gaps in the supply chain. And he has adjusted these tariffs in response to market reaction and consumer reaction. And I think we can expect that again. I do not think that he's going to end up in a situation where he's having to deal with serious inflation or supply chain issues. I do think he's going to continue pressing other countries until this global trading system becomes more balanced.
Stephen Vaughn, the acting trade representative when Donald Trump was first in power in the White House. Really good to talk to you this evening. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.